addicted to drugs. And you know, these are women just like you and me. The drugs are legal. They're prescribed by their doctors. Well, our next guest is an alcohol and drug abuse counselor, and she's bringing the subject out of the closet finally in her book, Female Fix. Please welcome Muriel Nellis. You know, when you talk about women addicted to drugs, it conjures up an image of a drug addict, a junkie. Who are these women?
They're any of us. They are those of us that go in pursuit of our health to our doctors, and we're a little nervous about having to go in the first place. And the first thing he notices is that we're nervous, and often says, you know, you ought to calm down a bit. Well, why don't you take a little tranquilizer? That happens to so many women and so often, and most women see more than one doctor anyway. Again, because we're careful about taking care of ourselves. We are urged to see all kinds of special doctors as well as the general doctor. And those that don't think that we are neurotic or hypochondriac just notice that we tell them, quite friendly, that we're not sleeping well, or we're losing our patience with our kids, or things are getting to us.
These are not only women addicted to tranquilizers. This is uppers, downers, keep me going through the day pills, that kind of thing, right?
It turns out that the largest percentage of those that we get hooked on, and I use the we generically because though it hasn't happened to me, it sure could have just as easily as anybody. Because there is absolutely no way of preventing it once you really start taking them. It is absolutely going to hook you.
How do you know if you're addicted?
Because you think you can't manage without it.
Oh, are there symptoms, though, that you see?
Well, you may be the last one to see it, or I, if I were taking them. That you start speaking in halftime, that movements are slow. I'm talking about the sedatives or the depressants, minor or otherwise. Minor is a bad word to use. They are more troublesome in many respects than the really heavy sedatives because they have a half-life, which means that some of it remains in your system for as much as a week afterwards.
Oh, goodness, so the combination, you just keep compounding things as you take pills.
There's always some left in there. But the sedatives really are the largest class of drugs that women really get hooked on. The amphetamines, frankly, in my view, have no business being prescribed at all. They ought to be out of doctor's armamentarium.
Diet pills.
They're being prescribed for diet pills, yeah.
There's a controversy, and I've heard both sides. Are diet pills really dangerous if you're on them for a short time?
They're dangerous because you know, our bodies are simply the most extraordinary computers. I mean, medical science, however it lists itself as science, is really more art than science. It's kind of a technology. And they don't understand what makes the body function. They don't understand the systems well enough. They understand what they've come to understand, but that leaves a whole lot yet to be discovered. And they do know that by using chemicals that affect the central nervous system, and all of these do, that means the spine and the brain, and centers of the brain they don't understand at all, nor are they trained to understand. They are asking your body to be hand set. That computer clock, which is reasonably automatic if you're healthy, reasonably healthy, and if you're not, by the way, has a tendency more often than not to heal itself. They're asking you to hand set that clock every time you take in something that affects that central nervous system, to slow it or to speed it up.
I'd like to know why they call it the female fix.
Well, I called it the female fix. In fact, my publishers thought it was going to cause some controversy because it was clear to me that the prescription audits and emergency room data make it clear that 3/4 almost of all of the prescriptions written for these mood-altering drugs, that is, drugs that affect symptoms but don't cure anything.
Certainly don't help with the cause, no.
No, and very often create a whole new set of problems, are more often than not given to women than they are to men. 90% of the women that show up in emergency rooms across the country with some drug or related incident are on legal drugs.
So, however, even though they're legal, are you blaming the doctors then for prescribing them without knowing someone's lifestyle or how badly they might abuse?
I'm blaming doctors for a certain amount of intellectual laziness. I'm blaming doctors for allowing themselves to be victimized by hype and market research and ads in their journals that are, by the way, depicting women most of all, and depicting the men in their lives as being annoyed by these women who are screaming memes and not coping well and keeping them up at night. For buying into this tranquilization for the most part, or make her, you know, through chemistry, make her beautiful. It's her duty to be beautiful. Syndrome that is foisted on them by an industry whose business it is to be truthful for their stockholders, to make a profit. When doctors' first mission is to first do no harm. Hippocrates said that, and they should remember that more than they do.
Well, I'm sure we all remember the Karen Ann Quinlan case, right? I mean, that was one of the saddest combinations of Valium and alcohol. Except since then, there has been so much talk about Valium. Why is it still on the market if, in fact, it is so dangerous and easy to abuse?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Even in the physician's desk reference, which is, you know, everybody refers to the PDR as the Bible, which is paid for, by the way, as advertising by each of the manufacturers whose products are in there. I don't think most people know that. It is not really an objectively put together text. It is paid for by the manufacturers. They don't, for example, even list the half-life characteristics of this whole class of benzodiazepines, these minor tranquilizers. They, for example, will say, even in the indications for use, don't drive when you're taking this drug, or don't take it with alcohol. What they do is blame the alcohol, by the way, that this increases the alcohol's sedative quality. It's a nice play on words. But they don't bother to tell you that 2 or 3 days later, in fact, you ought to be concerned with having to do something that requires, you know, quick response motor skills, because that stuff is still in your body.
Well, we have to take a break. I, however, have heard that Valium is coming off the market. I want to ask you about that, and we'll get our audience involved. I'll bet you some of you have at one time or another taken tranquilizers, right? I see some head shaking. We'll be right back. Drug and alcohol abuse consultant Muriel Nellis is our guest, and we're here talking about why 1 out of 4 American women have to take a pill to get up in the morning, 1 to go to bed at night, 1 to cope throughout the day. Staggering statistics. I asked you all if any of you had ever taken tranquilizers, and I saw you shake your head. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have a story to tell?
Yes. 5 years ago when I had a baby, I went to my obstetrician afterwards because I wasn't feeling well, and he prescribed Valium. And didn't tell me, I had never heard of a Valium before, and didn't tell me what it was to take it 3 times a day. After I took the prescription, I went back, and he also prescribed phenobarbital. I took them, and then I stopped. But I'm just saying, you know, we didn't...
Wait, what, you took them both together?
No. I finished the Valium prescription, then he gave me one for phenobarbital. And
Did you have a reaction?
No, but I'm just saying, today I wouldn't take it, you know, my life depends on it, but then I didn't know what I was doing. I felt at the time he was giving me the best treatment.
All right, Muriel?
The important thing is that we seldom question doctors when they give us these things, and I'm curious about how many women in this room, when they are offered a prescription by their doctor, ever ask what it's intended to treat, and or whether they're told specifically what it's for, beyond just when to take it and for how long.
How many of you do always religiously ask your doctor? Not many of us. I get the impression we don't ask our doctors enough about our bodies.
Well, it's interesting. We tell them a great deal about us, and the only diagnosis they make really depends, except for a fever or a rash, on what we tell them. And yet we don't ask them in turn what it is they're asking us to do to our bodies. We've got to stop that.
Is there any safe way to take drugs?
I don't want it to appear that I'm condemning medication across the board. There is no absolutely safe drug, even aspirin for some. I mean, people can become poisoned by that if they're allergic to it. On the other hand, there are some drugs that without which people would get much sicker. So it's important, for example, for hypertensive patients, diabetes, things of that nature where we've got a disease or got an imbalance. And some technology, some medication can give life quality and function. Certainly one should take it. But let's stop medicating moods. Let's start dealing with why they're there. Let's stop medicating symptoms because it doesn't cure a thing, not even the problem.
Okay. Hi, my name is Eva DeZazzo, and I'm presently in a residential program for women who have drug and alcohol problems. And I'd like to say that my problem started from going to doctors morning, noon, and night for a back ailment that turned into a psychological problem so severe that I needed treatment because I was always under so much pressure. And as soon as I walked into a doctor's office, his first reaction would be a prescription pad with a Valium
and Percodan.
or a Percodan.
I knew it, yeah.
and I had a severe, severe problem
With the drugs.
with the drugs.
Are you working out of that?
Yes, I am. I've been in treatment for 6 months, and I feel great now.
I liked it. Terrific.
Thank you for sharing that very much. Is that common? To treat the pain, we give you Valium or a Percodan or...
Yeah, pain is a difficult thing, and it's not, and back pain is a very common problem, and too easily. That's an opiate derivative, by the way, and the result is very similar to heroin addiction. Coming off it is very painful and lonely.
Are vitamins beneficial for helping women to cope?
I don't hear the
Do you
question.
find that vitamins are beneficial to help women to cope?
Extremely so. Understanding your body means understanding what it needs. It means understanding what you're really eating. Forget what they say about not needing vitamins. So far as I'm concerned, our food has been polluted in the ground and processed to death, and the old four-group business probably doesn't apply as much as it should today because there isn't much of those things left in it that we counted on being there. A little bit of extra help would go a long way, and women in particular do need some things. Good nutritionist, I think, would make an enormous difference in our lives.
I'm going to tell you, you have brought up so many messages today. We get the message to be beautiful, to be a super mom, to be a superwoman. There is a lot of pressure on women today, and I can see where it'd be easy if a doctor says, here's a prescription for Valium, to go and take it.
But that was always so, and women always were given, when it was legal. Women at one point in this country outstripped men 2 to 1 as opiate addicts. That was after the Civil War, when opium was in every cough medicine that doctors could give, or for the vapors. They were, on the one hand, weeping, wailing, grieving widows, on the other hand, running the farms and the stills. So they were given the prescribed medication and took it.
My name is Katie Portis, and I'm Executive Director of Women Incorporated. And first, I'd like to congratulate you on your book.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to reading it. But I think that talking about prescribed...
I'm sorry, Katie. Let's see if we can get rid of that. Go ahead.
Okay, I think in talking about prescribed medication, there's a connection how it gets to be street drugs. Meaning that a lot of time women go to the doctor, and the doctor gives them big bottles of pills and tell them to take it for 10 days. And when the 10 days is over, it's left in your medicine cabinet. And then your children, your adolescents, take it to the street, and that's how we end up sometimes with young addicts.
That's an interesting point, and it's also mixed then with other street drugs in order to increase the high when the purity of other drugs is low. The other thing that happens, by the way, is that many of your kids will use the rationale of all of those things in your medicine cabinet as your drugs of choice, and why should you complain about theirs?
Hi, my name is Donna. I'd like to know how a doctor can keep on prescribing something for someone to the point where they would become addicted.
Addiction to, the word addiction, and it is a proper word because withdrawal produces symptoms of agitation and all of the things that one assigns to heroin and other opiate addiction. A doctor very often prescribes it once, and what you do is you get it refilled and refilled and refilled, whether or not you see him again. And on these class 4 drugs, because we have the controlled substances and they are seldom controlled, you can keep refilling, and after a point the doctor needs only call it in. He doesn't have to see you at all.
I see the
addiction.
title of your book is The Female Fix. Don't you think men have the same problem as women as far as the drugs?
They don't have the same problem for a couple of reasons. One, they don't take minor complaints to the doctor very often. And as a result, doctors don't give them minor pills of this sort to treat symptoms. And the other thing is that they often won't take a sedative drug that they must take during the day because it might affect their work.
Of course, that'll change in the women's world soon, too. The book is called The Female Fix. Would you join me in thanking Muriel Nellis?